People didn't look twice when the guard slammed her against the cold tile wall. They only turned their heads when they heard her laugh. It wasn't the laugh of someone amused, it was the kind that made the skin on the back of your neck prickle. Short, sharp, laced with something dangerous. It was 5:42 p.m., rush hour at the Eastborough Central Station, and the crowd moved in jagged waves. The departure boards flickered with delays, trains screeched on steel, and the smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air. Somewhere between Platform 9 and the ticket gates, Marcia Lane found herself with her wrists twisted behind her back, cold steel cuffs biting into her skin. She hadn't planned on being in the spotlight. The whole point of undercover work was to blend in. But the moment the first guard spotted her, his pale eyes narrowing, his hand drifting toward his radio, Marcia knew the op had just shifted gears. Black female, mid-30s, suspicious behavior. The call went out over the guard's channel. No description of her clothes. No mention of what exactly she had done. Just black female. The second guard, a thick-set man with a shaved head and the kind of jawline that looked carved out of resentment, was on her in seconds. "Hands where I can see them," he barked, stepping into her path. She complied. Slowly, calmly. She even smiled because it wasn't the first time someone had mistaken her skin for a threat. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that in her inside jacket pocket rested a thin black wallet stamped with the seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And tucked beneath that, a tiny transmitter was still sending every sound and image back to an unmarked van parked 2 blocks away. From the corner of her eye, she spotted Director Ames's voice crackling over her hidden earpiece. "Lane, do not blow cover. Repeat, do not blow cover." Too late. The taller guard's grip tightened. "Got a runner," he muttered to his partner. "I wasn't running," Marcia replied evenly. "I was walking to my train." "Don't lie to me," he said, shoving her forward toward a narrow service corridor. Her mind was already running scenarios. The original mission was simple. Track a known arms dealer moving through Eastborough Central, confirm the handoff, and signal the tactical team. No arrests, no exposure. But now she had a growing audience. Dozens of passengers had slowed, whispering, recording with their phones. The guards didn't care. They liked being watched. The older one, the chief, stood a few feet away, arms crossed, wearing a smirk that made her stomach turn. His name tag read C. Radford, but everyone in Eastborough security just called him Chief Cliff. "Another fare dodger?" he asked lazily, not even looking at her ticket, which was still visible in her hand. "She was acting suspicious near the lockers," the shaved head guard answered. That much was true, but only because Marcia had been monitoring Locker 114, where their target was supposed to stash a case full of untraceable firearms. Her mind kept working. If the arms dealer saw her getting dragged away, he might spook, change plans, vanish. Weeks of preparation could be wasted. Or worse, it could strike tonight. Outside the corridor, a train wailed as it pulled in, drowning out the chatter. Inside, the air felt different, thicker. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. The guards pushed her into a small, grimy holding room that smelled of stale sweat and cheap disinfectant. "You can explain yourself here," the tall one said. Marcia tilted her head. "Do you want to explain to my supervisor why you're detaining a federal?" The sharp pop of her earpiece cutting out told her everything. They'd just moved her out of transmitter range. She was on her own. "Empty your pockets," Radford ordered. She hesitated. If she revealed her badge now, the mission would be over. But if she didn't, she risked getting booked, searched, and possibly strip-checked, all on camera, all without backup. Radford took a step closer, his voice dropping low. "You people think you can do whatever you want here. Not in my station." There it was. The line. Marcia's hands tightened into fists. She forced herself to loosen them. Losing her temper was exactly what they wanted. "What people would that be?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. His smirk deepened. "You know, somewhere." In the main hall, she heard a familiar sound, the soft metallic click of Locker 114 opening. Her pulse spiked. The arms dealer was here. She couldn't wait for the cavalry. Marcia straightened. "I need to make a phone call." "You'll get your one call after processing," Radford said. She stepped forward, eyes locked on his. "If you don't let me out of here in the next 60 seconds, there will be more law enforcement in this building than you've seen in your entire career. And they won't be here for me." Radford chuckled, glancing at the other guards. "Hear that? She thinks she's some kind of secret agent." The others laughed. Marcia didn't. That was when she heard the scream. It came from the main hall, sharp, urgent, and followed by a deep male voice shouting something she couldn't make out. The guards froze for a split second, instincts battling arrogance. Then chaos erupted. A gunshot cracked through the air. Radford's smirk vanished. Marcia stepped forward, eyes blazing. Now are you going to uncuff me? Or do you want to explain to the press why you let a shooter walk right past you while you were busy arresting an innocent woman? Radford's jaw worked, but before he could respond, another gunshot rang out closer this time. Screams echoed from the main hall, a cascading panic that rolled through the station like a shockwave. The taller guard swore under his breath and reached for his radio. Unit 12, what's going on? Static answered him. Marcia took one sharp step forward, closing the distance to Radford. Keys. Now. He hesitated, eyes darting toward the door. The arrogance in his posture was gone. What was left was the same thing she'd seen 100 times before in civilians under fire fear. I said now. Her voice cracked like a whip, startling even her. For a second, he didn't move. Then his hand fumbled for the keyring at his belt. The cuffs came off with a click. The moment she was free, she rubbed her wrists, not to soothe them, but to make sure her reflexes were sharp. You're welcome, she muttered, brushing past him. Radford's voice caught up to her. Wait, where do you think you're going? To stop whoever's shooting up your station. She shot back without slowing down. She pushed through the service door and back into the main hall and immediately saw the crowd had split in two, like a river forced around jagged rocks. In the center, a man in a dark hoodie clutched a silver pistol, his eyes wild, scanning for threats. In his other hand was a black duffel bag, the exact one she'd been told to track. The arms dealer. Only now, instead of quietly delivering his cargo to a contact, he was firing into the ceiling and screaming for everyone to stay back. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Marcia's mind raced. She had no weapon standard procedure when deep undercover in a civilian space. Her only tools were her training, her badge, and the hope that the TAC team was still close enough to intervene. She scanned the perimeter. People were ducking behind kiosks, diving under benches. But her eyes landed on something else. Locker 114, still hanging open, the metal door bent where it had been pried with something sharp. And behind it a glint of steel. She didn't hesitate. Radford and the other two guards emerged from the service corridor just in time to see her sprint toward the lockers. Lane, Radford barked. Get back. She ignored him, sliding across the tile floor and reaching into the locker. Her fingers closed around cold metal, a compact submachine gun wrapped in clear plastic. The dealer spotted her. Hey, he shouted, swinging his pistol toward her. She had two choices: duck and lose the element of surprise, or move in. She moved in. Marcia ripped open the plastic, chambered around, and fired 3 quick shots into the column of tiles beside him, not to hit, but to force him into cover. The sound cracked through the hall, silencing the chaos for a half-second before a new wave of panic surged. Federal agent, she yelled, her voice cutting through the noise. Drop the weapon. The dealer froze, his eyes darting between her and the crowd. She could see him calculating run, shoot, or surrender. He chose wrong. The pistol came up. She squeezed the trigger. The shot took the pistol clean out of his hand, sending it skidding across the floor. He staggered back, clutching his wrist, then bolted toward the nearest stairwell. Marcia chased him, weaving through the scattering passengers. Her boots pounded the tile, the echoes mixing with distant sirens. She caught him halfway up the stairs. He turned, swinging the duffel like a weapon. It connected with her shoulder, sending a jolt of pain down her arm. She gritted her teeth, slammed her knee into his ribs, and wrenched the bag away. He stumbled, but didn't fall. You think you can stop this? He spat, his voice low and venomous. It's bigger than you, lady. Marcia didn't answer. She just drove her fist into his jaw, and he crumpled to the steps. By the time the first wave of tactical officers poured in, weapons drawn, she had the dealer cuffed with his own restraints and the duffel secured. Ames's voice crackled in her ear again, faint but audible. Lane status. Package secured, she said, catching her breath. 1 suspect in custody. And tell your boys to thank station security for really helping out. Her eyes slid toward Radford, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs, staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time. In the aftermath, the station was a mess of flashing lights, rattled commuters, and yellow police tape. News crews had already gathered outside, sniffing for a story. Marcia sat on the edge of a bench, a medic wrapping her shoulder. Across from her, the dealer was being loaded into the back of a police van. Radford approached slowly, hands shoved deep into his pockets. He stopped a few feet away. "So FBI, huh?" Marcia looked up at him. Surprise. He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, save it," she cut in. "You see a black woman in your station and assume she's trouble. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. And one day, it's going to cost you more than your pride." His jaw tightened. He didn't argue. Maybe because the cameras were still rolling, or maybe because some part of him knew she was right. Still, as she walked out of Eastboro Central that night, duffel in hand, she knew the story wasn't over. The guns in that bag were meant for something bigger, and the man she'd just put down was only a messenger. The real storm was still coming. The next morning, Eastboro Central Station looked like nothing had happened, at least to the casual eye. The tile floors had been scrubbed, the bullet holes in the column patched over with pale plaster, and commuters flowed in and out like a river that didn't care about yesterday's flood. But Marcia knew better. Violence leaves a scent that no cleaning crew can wash away. She stood on the mezzanine, coffee in hand, scanning the station below. Not for suspects this time at least, not directly. She was looking for patterns. People who lingered too long in corners. Quick handoffs. Unusual luggage. She'd been in worse places, but there was something about Eastboro that got under her skin. The incident with Radford wasn't just a blip, it was a symptom. Her phone buzzed. She didn't need to look to know it was Ames. "Tell me you're not still at the station," he said, his voice low. "Tell me you found out where the guns were headed," she replied. A pause. Then, "That duffel? Partial shipment. The rest is still moving. Our intel says Eastboro's security or new best friends are part of the pipeline." Her fingers tightened on the coffee cup. "You're telling me the guys who tried to cuff me yesterday are running guns?" "Not all of them. But Radford? He's in it up to his neck." She let the words hang there. 2 levels down, Radford himself was striding through the crowd, talking into his radio like nothing had changed. His uniform was crisp, his posture stiff, but his eyes were different, harder. Marcia started down the escalator. "Then it's time to make him talk." Ames's voice was sharp. "Careful. We need him alive, and we need proof. We can't just grab him in front of commuters." "I'm not planning to grab him." She intercepted him near the ticket gates. He froze for half a second when he saw her, then forced a smirk. "Agent Lane," he said, the title heavy with mockery. "What brings you back to my station?" "Your charm," she said evenly. "And maybe the fact that your little friend with the duffel didn't work alone." His eyes flickered just enough to confirm she'd hit a nerve. "You should be careful throwing accusations like that," he said. "Could be dangerous." Marcia stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You think last night was dangerous? Wait until you see what's coming. I've got the rest of your shipment in my sights. Walk away from this now, Radford, and I'll make sure you're just a footnote in the report. Stick around, and you'll be the headline." For a moment, he looked like he might respond. Then his radio crackled. A voice low, male, tense said, "Platform 6. Now." Radford turned on his heel without another word. Marcia followed. Platform 6 was quieter than the others, the sound of trains muted by the concrete curve of the tunnel. Only a handful of passengers stood waiting, most with their eyes on their phones. Radford walked straight past them to the service door at the far end. Without breaking stride, he swiped his keycard and slipped inside. Marcia waited until the door clicked shut before moving. She pulled a small device from her pocket, a wafer-thin signal booster, and slid it into her ear. "Ames, I'm going in," she whispered. "Copy," he said. "You've got 5 minutes before my people breach." The service corridor was narrow, lined with peeling paint and exposed wiring. She followed the sound of voices, Radford's low growl, and another she didn't recognize. "Can't keep doing this in the open," the stranger was saying. "That woman's a problem." "She's nothing," Radford replied. "Couple more runs, and I'm out for good. Then she's someone else's problem." Marcia edged closer until she could see them, Radford, and a tall man in a dark suit with the kind of stillness that screamed ex-military. Between them sat a heavy black case, unlatched. Inside, neatly packed, were more weapons. Her pulse kicked. "Shipment goes tonight," the suited man said. "Same route. Just keep the eyes off us long enough to get clear." Radford nodded. "I'll keep the cameras blind. You just make sure the money's there." Marcia stepped into the open. How about we skip the money and go straight to the part where you both get bracelets to match mine from yesterday? The suited man's hand went for his coat. Marcia was faster. Her boot connected with the side of the case, slamming it shut, and she leveled her pistol standard issue this time square at his chest. Radford froze. The suited man didn't. He lunged. The corridor exploded into motion. Marcia sidestepped, the man's shoulder grazing hers, and brought the butt of her pistol down on the back of his neck. He staggered, but stayed up. Radford bolted for the door. Marcia's instincts screamed to go after him, but the suited man was still between her and the exit. He swung again, this time with a short, curved blade pulled from his sleeve. She caught his wrist, twisted hard, and heard the knife clatter to the floor. "Bad day to bring a knife to a gunfight," she said, shoving him into the wall. He snarled something in a language she didn't recognize, then went limp. By the time she reached the platform again, Radford was gone. Ames's voice cut in. "Lane status?" "Lost Radford," she said, scanning the crowd. "But I've got one of his buyers and a fresh shipment." "That's enough for now," Ames replied. "Pull back. We'll run the prints, dig up the network." Marcia hesitated. "You know he's going to run. And you're going to let him for now. Sometimes you get more by letting the rat lead you to the nest." That night, back at her apartment, Marcia sat at her kitchen table with the case open in front of her. Each weapon was tagged and logged, the cold metal reflecting the warm light of the single overhead bulb. She thought about Radford's face when he saw her that morning, how quickly arrogance had turned to calculation. This wasn't just about guns. It wasn't just about crime. It was about who got the benefit of the doubt in this city and who didn't. And if Ames thought she was going to just wait and see, he didn't know her as well as he thought. The trail led Marcia out of the city. Radford didn't make it easy, no credit cards, no obvious contacts. But he couldn't resist using the same route the guns had taken before. A closed-down freight depot 30 miles east, guarded by the kind of men who thought tattoos counted as credentials. She parked 2 blocks away, the night air biting at her skin, and listened to the faint hum of diesel generators. The place smelled of oil and secrets. Ames's voice was steady in her ear. "Lane, you're solo until the perimeter is secure. Confirm Radford's presence before moving." She gave a quiet copy and slipped between rusted shipping containers, her boots silent on the gravel. Voices carried from the depot office. "Told you. This is the last run," Radford was saying. "I've got heat from every direction after that stunt at the station." "You're lucky you're still breathing," another man replied, deeper, older voice, heavy with authority. Marcia edged closer until the cracked window came into view. Inside, Radford stood across from a man she recognized instantly. Vincent Markel, a local political fixer with a knack for keeping dirty cops in clean uniforms. So that was the missing piece. The reason Radford had survived this long wasn't loot kit, was protection. She slipped her phone out, snapping a series of photos through the window. Proof. Not enough for court yet, but enough to pull Markel into daylight. Radford's tone shifted, low and urgent. "What about the woman?" Markel waved a dismissive hand. "She's noise. Public gets distracted easy. 1 week and they'll forget she exists." That did it. Marcia stepped through the doorway, her pistol raised. "Guess again." Radford's hand twitched toward his belt. "Don't," she said, her voice cold enough to freeze the air. "I've had a long week, and I'm all out of patience for racist cowards with guns." Markel's eyes narrowed. "Agent Lane, I presume. You think walking in here alone makes you brave?" "No," she said. "It makes me dangerous." The click of safeties echoed from the shadows to armed men stepping into view. Marcia didn't flinch. "You've got 3 seconds to drop your weapons," she said. 1. Radford laughed. "You're not going to shoot me." 2. Markel smirked. "You kill us, you'll never make it out alive." Marcia's finger rested against the trigger. 3. The generators cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. In the confusion, she moved. One kick sent Radford's gun skidding across the floor. A sharp elbow to Markel's chest dropped him against the desk. The armed men fired blind into the blackness, their muzzle flashes giving away their positions. Marcia used the bursts of light like beacons, closing the distance and disarming the first before he could chamber another round. The second went down hard, a sweep of her leg sending him crashing into a stack of crates. When the backup lights flickered on, Radford was on his knees, Markel gasping for breath, and the weapons shipment, dozens of rifles and handguns exposed in the corner. Ames's voice filled the room. Nice work, Lane. We've got them on all sides. Hold position. She kept her pistol leveled at Radford until the tactical team swarmed in, cuffing everyone in sight. As they were let out, Radford tried one last jab. You think this changes anything? There'll be another me next week. Another Markel. You can't stop it. Marcia stepped closer, her voice low enough for only him to hear. Maybe not. But I stopped you. And every time someone like me does, we make it harder for the next one to breathe. His smirk faltered for the first time. The press was waiting outside the depot. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, questions shouted. A reporter called out, Agent Lane, is it true station security racially profiled you before discovering you were FBI? She met the woman's gaze. It's true they profiled me. And it's true that if they'd treated me like any other commuter, the real criminals might have slipped through. That's what prejudice costs us, not just dignity, but safety. The murmurs in the crowd turned into the hum of headlines being written. Later, in the Bureau's conference room, Ames slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of the case photos, the chain of custody forms, and a commendation request. You did good, he said. She didn't smile. It's not over. It never is, he admitted. But tonight, you hit them where it hurts. She stood, tucking the folder under her arm. Then tomorrow, we do it again. That night, walking home through the quiet streets, Marcia replayed the last few days. The cuffs on her wrists, the smirk on Radford's face, the gunshots in the station, and the moment the crowd saw her for what she really was, not a suspect, not a stereotype, but the person standing between them and chaos. The city wasn't fixed. The station wasn't magically free of its rot. But somewhere, someone who'd seen her that night would remember. And maybe the next time they looked at a stranger, they'd think twice before deciding who was dangerous. She could live with that. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.